Welcome to Season 2 of The Influencers. We've expanded our scope to bring you interviews with some of the most interesting and thoughtful voices from the digitally driven seismic transformation happening at the intersection of law, business, and technology. We'll be sharing with you the rapidly evolving information that you need to know.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Influencers, our podcast conversation on digital transformation and law. I'm Leo von Gerlach, and with me today is Stefan Schiefer. Stefan is CEO of Genesis Cloud. Genesis Cloud is a leading company in the emerging field of cloud infrastructure services for AI applications. Stefan is not only extremely technology savvy and business smart, he's also one of the most ardent promoters of the blessings that AI will bring for all of us. It is always most inspiring to speak with Stefan, and surely this conversation will be no exception. So before looking closer into your vision for Genesis Cloud, Stefan, and its place in business, a question to you and your personal story. With your background in semiconductor engineering, how did you end up driving Genesis Cloud? What brought you there?
Thanks, Leo, for the warm welcome. Very appreciated. Actually, from the background, I'm a physicist. I studied semiconductor physics in Munich, and with my last startup that I built up, we were already building analytical equipment for the semiconductor industry, and we were selling to companies like ASML, for example, or TSMC. And those are the companies that built those high-end GPU chips that are now needed for AI. So I was already in that industry with my last startup. And I got to know Marco Streng and Marco Krohn, who are the founders of Genesis Mining. They funded in 2013 one of the largest mining companies in the crypto space. And in crypto, you also need GPUs to mine. And that was actually their idea in 2018 to build a company that not only mines, but also uses GPUs for AI machine learning workloads. At that time, generative AI was not a big deal. So it was a quite early vision from them to build such a company. And they called this company Genesis Cloud. And then in 2022, when generative AI really took off, we all know the ChatGPT moment, then they changed the strategy a bit from Genesis Cloud. It was on consumer GPUs before that, and then they changed to those professional high-end GPUs that are needed for those AI workloads. And that was the moment where I joined. So I knew them personally, and it was that big strategic shift towards generative AI. And that's when we decided that I will become the CEO of Genesis Cloud. Also because I had an AI consulting background. I was consulting for more than 2 years AI startups, and I'm very familiar with the generative AI space.
So that brings us already close to the business model of Genesis Cloud. So you spoke about GPUs, meaning graphic processor units, and there is obviously that difference between GPUs and those traditional CPU, central processing units. Perhaps you share with us what those specific GPUs mean for Genesis Cloud's business model and why that is so tightly knit with one another.
So maybe a little bit technical background. Why GPUs and why not CPUs? So we all know those traditional cloud services. Everyone has an email account in a cloud. And all those clouds from Google, Microsoft, and so on, AWS, they are all CPU-centric clouds. That means all those services, all those applications that are running in this cloud use a CPU. Then you sort of type something into your app. You want to actually read your email. Then the app sends a command to the database in that CPU-based cloud, and you get your data, you get your email. With AI, it's totally different. You have AI models, and those AI models are very compute intensive. When an AI model is in production, it's called inference. When you train a model, it's just AI training. And when you actually ask the AI something, then this is called inference. And this inference task is very compute intensive, and GPUs are, so to say, very simple processing units. They can do one task, but they can do one task very fast, and they work highly parallel. So that is the difference between a CPU and a GPU. A CPU is, so to say, a general manager that can do everything, but there's only one manager. A CPU is thousands and thousands of very small circuits that are very specialized, but then they can be highly parallel. And this is what AI actually needs to be fast. So you have to build an AI data center on GPUs and not CPUs.
So I understand you really focus on the use of GPUs because they are very good at matrix calculation, and matrix calculation is kind of at the heart what AI is doing.
Exactly.
And when you now just think about better sharpen the business proposition of Genesis Cloud to optimize its infrastructure ever further to improve these cloud services for AI applications, is it that this also hinges on improvements or enlargements of the processors, or would other things come into play?
Yeah, so it's two things actually. Of course, you need the GPUs because with CPUs, it's simply not enough compute there to do the AI models, but you also need the software backend. Our customers, they develop AI models. And to develop AI models, you need specialized software, for example, MLOps platform. MLOps means machine learning operations software. This is more or less a software where you can put in your personal training data or enterprise training data. Then you can pick a certain model that you want to train, and then you can put that model also into production. Those kind of applications we are integrating also into our backend. Our backend, you can see more or less like the basis foundation, and you can put certain AI application on top of that basis. And that backend actually then distributes all those necessary calculations to the thousands and thousands of GPUs that you need to train and put a model into production. So we are also building up the software stack that makes AI models over time easier and easier to use, with the end goal that some employee in a company can use and program its own AI model.
So that's interesting. You spoke about the data that go into the models that are then onward processed. That immediately leads to a question for a cloud service provider. How do you cater for the security, for the protection of those data that go in? How do the firewalls, how do the railguard look like?
Yeah, so security, of course, is a big issue in general in cloud business. So that was already part of the CPU-centric clouds. And with GPU, it's even further, because AI is something that most enterprises will use in the future very intensively. So it has to be especially safe. So two things. In the modern GPU cloud, like we use and also our competitors, encryption is really key. So we encrypt everything. This is one part. And then if you're an enterprise, there are certain models, for example, RAG models, so retrieval augmented models, means that the data that is precious, so the enterprise data, remains within the enterprise, and the AI model is in the cloud. So that means the AI model, you can actually look like a reasoning engine. Yeah. So the reasoning engine is outside of the enterprise, and the precious enterprise data, like customer contracts, whatever it is in a database inside of the enterprise. And if the employee asks some question, so can you please check if this incident is according to some customer contract, for example, then the reasoning engine outside of the enterprise in the cloud, in our cloud, processes this data anonymously and then sends it back to the retrieval model, and the retrieval model inside of the enterprise loads the data from the enterprise database and actually presents that data to the employee that has prompted this question. So in that case, the data is as safe as the enterprise makes their databases safe. And there is actually no really valuable information sent over to the cloud, so that security is not a big issue there. But there are also other models, of course, where the data has to be put in the cloud because the amount of data is so large that you want to train the model with that data. And there we have, of course, industry standard security measures like encryption and ISO certifications. For example, there is a ISO 27001, which is a security ISO certification. All our data centers have that. Our backend technology is also done in a way that it's very secure.
So that's very reassuring for your customers to hear that there is kind of a minimal data flow going into the system. Just leading me to the next question about scaling. With all we read about the enormous demand in processing power for AI applications, these comments about investments into data centers, into cloud service provision, how do you make sure that Genesis Cloud keeps pace with this growing demand for computing and cloud services in the AI space?
Yes, this is absolutely true. The pace, how fast this infrastructure scales is really amazing. I think I've never seen such a speed before. And there are always bottlenecks that you need to take care for. In the beginning, we had bottlenecks, for example, with the high-end NVIDIA GPUs, because they are limited through TSMC's production capacity. As we started with Genesis Mining in 2013, we have very, very good supplier relationships with NVIDIA, and we are actually favored in their supply chain. So it's a really, really key to have good supplier relationships with those companies that make those precious GPUs. And then also network chips were a big issue after that. So it's even harder to get network chips because all those GPUs are connected with a very fast network. And those chips also have become a bottleneck over time. And we also have very good supplier relationships with those companies that produce those network chips. And nowadays, it's even the transformators that are used in data centers. Yeah. So they also were a bottleneck. Elon Musk phrased it very nicely. He said, you need transformers to train transformers. So the transformers in data centers, they actually take care that the high voltage is scaled down to the very low voltage that those chips need. And those were also bottlenecks. So now everyone is fighting actually for data center capacity. And with Genesis Mining, we are very familiar how to build data centers. We have very long-lasting relationships with data center providers. And this has become a bottleneck. And ultimately, there is a discussion right now ongoing if the electricity is enough to build up AI. And it goes even that far that one of our competitors thinks about building his own nuclear power plant to actually make sure that they have enough electricity for their data centers to deploy enough GPUs. So we are talking here about gigawatts. And it's crazy. I mean, if you see the investment from Microsoft in the last days, I think they announced $100 billion investment in the project Stargate or general in GPUs or AI infrastructure. It is a race that we've never seen before about resources, capacities, data center, electricity. But I think Genesis is very good positioned here because of their history in mining.
I mean, all the more important just to understand that you have those very good supplier relationships, which kind of allows you to maneuver around those bottlenecks as best as you can in order to get just capacity and computing power. Which leads me to a slightly different field, namely, just as we see these advancements in semiconductor technology, there are so many other advancements, just new models, new applications, new devices, new combinations. What do you see as those most relevant trends for Genesis Cloud, where you say, we look closer into them, we may invest into them, we follow up on them?
I just came back from the GTC, which is the most important AI conference that is hosted by NVIDIA in the Silicon Valley. You, of course, have to keep very close relationships with suppliers like NVIDIA, Intel, and AMD. Those are the ones that produce the GPUs. And this is the basis of AI. All AIs are built on those GPUs. So you have to understand what is their roadmap. What are their next generations of chips look like? What can you do with them? How can you deploy them in the data center? And then, of course, also our software backend. I mean, we've been talking about those additional, we call it managed services. So we keep also constant and regular contact. Our customer success department has constant contact with our customers. And those customers are developing the next generation AI applications, and we need to understand what are their needs. And they are actually telling us which managed services we are going to integrate next. So there's a constant development on the hardware side, on the GPU side, and there's a constant development actually on the software backend where you need to integrate useful services so that AI systems can be developed faster and be more powerful and more helpful.
Taking this one step further, are there any business relationships, cooperations, perhaps even beyond the sphere of hardware suppliers, software providers, where you say they are particularly relevant to accomplish Genesis Cloud's services?
So, for example, we are teaming up with all kinds of specialized AI companies. For example, MLOps platforms, we are collaborating with ClearML. Then you also need specialized databases for AI. You're not storing in a classical database. You have to vectorize your data. So everyone has probably heard, meanwhile, the term of a token. A token is, let's say, the bit of an AI. Yeah? And to store and process all those AIs, you need to store in a vector database. That is very beneficial. So we are also partnering with companies that have very fast vector storage databases. And of course, we also like to collaborate with academia. I mean, there's also a lot of projects going on and research going on in academia. And we also would like to hear their opinion, what they are working on, because this might be the next big model that's coming out, and you need to prepare for that as well. So those are more or less the relevant players we're in constant contact.
And then you're ideally located in Munich with a technical university that plays and puts so much emphasis now on artificial intelligence and everything that comes along with it.
Absolutely.
Perhaps going even one step further beyond Genesis Cloud and the impact, the most immediate impacts of AI, generative AI on society. I'm not here to speak with you about doomsday scenario. You would not be the right person because, like myself, I think you strongly believe in the benefits that the new technology can bring. Perhaps your idea, your vision, how you see this playing out in the short term.
Yeah, I'm quite optimistic actually about AI. Of course, there are always those doomsday guys, right? Whenever there is a great technology coming along, you have always both sides, right? What I think that the immediate near-term effects with AI for enterprise customers is that you probably get rid of all those boring work that employees anyway don't want to do, right? If you look at law companies and you get a new case and you have to read thousands of pages just to extract some information out there which is relevant for you, you can either ask like a couple of lawyers to do that for weeks, or you just ask the AI and it does it for you and you get that output immediately. I think it doesn't make, on the near term at least, it doesn't make us all redundant. It just makes us more effective. So I think everyone that embraces AI and collaborates with AI will just be a 10x more productive, right? You will just be faster in what you have already done before because you get rid of those long-term boring tasks that anyway no one wants to do, right? So I think that is quite interesting, and I see a more productive working environment and a more fun working environment actually if you collaborate with AI in the right way.
Stefan, that has been most exciting speaking with you, and that was certainly no disappointment to my great expectation to this conversation and this interview. So thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to listen to this just very insightful remarks about you and your company. It's very encouraging.
Thank you, Leo, for having me, and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you all for tuning in, for listening, and I hope you join us again for the next session of The Influencers, which will be coming up soon. For now, take care. Goodbye, everybody.
Visit our digital assets and blockchain hub at engagepremium.hoganlovells.com for more podcasts and other resources.